In England, mockery was rarely loud. It didn't shout from rooftops or announce itself with cruelty that could be easily named. Instead, it lived in the small, sharp places inside smiles that lingered too long, jokes that weren't meant to be repeated, and glances that carried conclusions without conversation. Isaiah learned to recognize it the way some people learn the weather. He felt it every morning on the train. The carriage was always crowded, yet when Isaiah sat down, the seat beside him often stayed empty. People stood rather than sit. Bags were shifted closer to chests. Conversations softened, then stopped entirely, as if his presence had changed the air itself. Isaiah kept his eyes forward. He wore neat clothes, always clean, always careful. He believed presentation mattered. That if he looked respectable enough, calm enough, invisible enough, the world would eventually relax around him. It didn't. At work, the mockery wore a friendly mask. Isaiah worked in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, long hours, heavy lifting, little appreciation. He arrived early and stayed late. He rarely complained. He told himself that effort would speak for him. Instead, others spoke over him. Jokes floated across the floor during breaks. Comments followed mistakes that weren't his. When he misunderstood a slang phrase once, laughter erupted behind him. "Relax," someone said. "It's just banter." Banter, Isaiah learned, was the excuse people used when cruelty wanted to sound harmless. One afternoon, a co-worker clapped him on the shoulder and laughed loudly. "Careful, mate," he said. "Don't want you getting ideas above your station." The others chuckled. Isaiah smiled faintly, the way he always did. He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. Asking would only make him look sensitive. And sensitive men, he had learned, were easier to dismiss. So he swallowed it. He swallowed it the same way he swallowed the jokes about where he was really from, even after years of living in the same city. The same way he swallowed being spoken to slowly, as if understanding required extra effort. The same way he swallowed the assumption that he was lucky just to be there. By the time Isaiah returned to his small flat each evening, the silence felt heavy but familiar. His home was modest, clean, quiet, and orderly. He liked control. Control made the world feel manageable. Sometimes he stood in front of the mirror longer than necessary, studying his reflection. He didn't hate what he saw. But he wondered how others could see something so different. Isaiah had grown up believing that if he kept his head down, life would pass him by gently. That dignity came from endurance. That responding to disrespect only invited more of it. But England had taught him something different. Disrespect did not disappear when ignored. It grew comfortable. One day at work, Isaiah made a small mistake, nothing serious, easily fixed. Before he could explain, laughter broke out. "See," someone said loudly. "This is why standards are dropping." The room went quiet after that. Not uncomfortable quiet. Satisfied quiet. Isaiah felt heat rush to his face. For a brief moment, he imagined saying something, anything. He imagined asking why mistakes were human for some people and proof for others. But the moment passed. He bent down, fixed the issue, and carried on. That night, Isaiah sat on the edge of his bed, hands clasped together. The city lights flickered through the window, distant and indifferent. For the first time in years, he felt tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Not physically. Spiritually. "How long?" he whispered to the empty room. How long could a man remain silent before silence erased him? Isaiah didn't want to be angry. He didn't want to fight. He only wanted what every man wanted, to be treated as human before being judged as anything else. He didn't know it yet, but that quiet question marked the beginning of something dangerous. Not dangerous to others. Dangerous to the system that relied on his silence. Because the man they mocked and disrespected was starting to realize something important. Endurance without voice was not strength. And England was about to meet a version of Isaiah that no longer believed silence was safety. The morning sun broke through the narrow blinds of Malik's small flat, casting long, slanted lines across the worn wooden floor. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the faded photograph of his late mother. Her eyes, warm and unyielding, seemed to challenge him silently. "You were made for more," the photo seemed to whisper. But in the cold reality of London, that more felt buried beneath layers of disrespect and ridicule. The last few weeks had been a storm. Malik's efforts at work were met with snide remarks from his colleagues. Small jokes about his accent, his appearance, even his name, they were like tiny daggers, each one piercing a little deeper into his confidence. His manager, ostensibly supportive, often looked the other way when the mockery escalated. It wasn't physical abuse, but it was a relentless erosion of dignity. Yet, Malik refused to let bitterness consume him. He had learned early that survival was about resilience. He walked the streets of East London every evening, the cold air biting at his face, clearing his mind. These walks were his ritual, his sanctuary. He listened to the city, the distant hum of traffic, the laughter spilling out of pubs, the rhythm of lives that seemed so normal yet were filled with hidden battles. One evening, as he passed a small cafe tucked into a side street, a group of men laughed loudly, glancing in his direction. Malik froze for a moment, recognizing the mocking glances he had grown accustomed to. But this time, instead of shrinking away, he squared his shoulders and walked past, his chin high, the fire in his chest refusing to be extinguished. Inside the cafe, Malik noticed a flyer pinned to the bulletin board: Community Workshop, Leadership and Personal Growth Free for All. Something about it tugged at him. For months, he had been searching for a way to channel his frustrations, to transform the disrespect into action. Maybe this was it, a path to not just survive, but thrive. The next day, he arrived early, the room sparsely populated. People of different backgrounds and ages were scattered across chairs, quietly chatting. The facilitator, a calm woman named Aisha, welcomed everyone warmly. Her energy was infectious, her confidence undeniable. She spoke about facing adversity, reclaiming one's voice, and turning challenges into stepping stones. As the workshop progressed, Malik felt a spark he hadn't experienced in a long time. He shared his story hesitantly at first, the subtle humiliations he endured daily, the constant questioning of his worth. When he spoke, the room listened not with pity, but with understanding. Other participants shared similar experiences, their voices intertwining into a tapestry of struggle and resilience. Malik realized he wasn't alone. Leaving the workshop that evening, Malik felt a subtle shift inside him. The weight of ridicule hadn't vanished, but it felt manageable now, transformed into fuel for action. He decided to start small, building a network of support among colleagues, finding allies who would amplify his voice rather than diminish it. Back at work, Malik faced the familiar jeers and quiet sneers. But now, he responded differently. Instead of retreating, he addressed the subtle jabs with calm confidence. "I know what I bring to this team," he said one afternoon, his voice steady. "And I expect to be treated with respect." Some laughed, some sneered, but for the first time, Malik didn't flinch. Evening after evening, he returned to his walks, his mind racing with ideas. He began jotting down notes for a project he had always dreamed of, a community initiative to empower young black men facing similar struggles. He envisioned mentorship programs, workshops, safe spaces for honest conversations. Every insult he endured became another brick in the foundation of this dream. By the end of the month, Malik had gathered a small group of like-minded individuals. They met in local libraries, cafes, and community centers, discussing ways to uplift one another. The laughter and camaraderie of these sessions contrasted sharply with the ridicule he faced elsewhere, but that contrast made him stronger. He began to see the unfairness of life not as a reason to surrender, but as a call to action. The transformation wasn't immediate. Some days, the sting of disrespect was sharp, and Malik questioned his efforts. But each time doubt crept in, he reminded himself of his mother's unwavering belief in him. And slowly, he realized something profound: the opinions of those who sought to demean him mattered far less than the power he was cultivating within. By the time part 2 draws to a close, Malik is no longer just surviving the mockery of others, he is beginning to wield it as a catalyst for change. The boy who once bent under the weight of derision is becoming a man who stands tall, determined to turn every slight into an opportunity for growth. The journey is far from over, but Malik now knows the first step. Reclaiming his voice is the first victory in a battle he was born to win. Malik's life was shifting, slowly but unmistakably. The once dreaded mornings had begun to feel different, less heavy, less oppressive. The mockery at work hadn't vanished, but he had learned to navigate it with quiet strength, using his calm and intelligence as shields. Each small victory over humiliation built his confidence, brick by brick, until he could almost feel himself growing taller than the narrow prejudices surrounding him. It was during one particularly tense week that Malik received a chance to prove himself. His manager, Mr. Grayson, who had always been distant, approached him with a proposal, a high-profile project that no one else wanted, complex and demanding. "I think you're the only one who can handle this," Grayson said, though Malik detected a trace of doubt and maybe, just maybe, a hint of challenge in his tone. The project was daunting. Malik would have to coordinate multiple teams, negotiate with clients who were notoriously difficult, and deliver results on a tight deadline. The others whispered behind his back, some even daring to laugh at the thought of him managing such a task. But Malik ignored the chatter. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, to show not just competence, but leadership, in the face of skepticism. He dove in with meticulous planning, staying late into the evenings, mapping out every detail, anticipating every problem. Slowly, his determination began to change the dynamics around him. Colleagues who had once mocked him started noticing his precision, his unwavering focus, and, most importantly, his ability to keep his cool under pressure. Malik wasn't seeking their approval, but he recognized its value as proof that the stereotypes that had plagued him were unfounded. One late afternoon, as Malik presented the preliminary results to the senior management team, he felt a surge of quiet triumph. His voice was steady, his arguments concise, his solutions innovative. Questions that were meant to trip him up only highlighted his expertise. For the first time, he saw the astonishment in their eyes, the subtle shift from doubt to respect. Word of Malik's success spread, even beyond the office walls. The small mentorship circle he had formed began to flourish as well. Young black men from the neighborhood reached out to him, seeking guidance, encouragement, and advice. Malik realized that his journey wasn't just personal, it was a path for others to follow. Every insult he had endured, every moment of being underestimated, could now be transformed into a lesson, a beacon of possibility for someone else. But success didn't erase the scars of disrespect. Some colleagues remained hostile, their sneers more bitter now that they could no longer dismiss him so easily. One day, a particularly arrogant coworker, Tom, made a snide remark during a team meeting. Malik paused, looked him in the eye, and replied calmly, "I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to do my job and do it well." The room went silent, and for the first time, Tom had no comeback. Even outside work, Malik's reputation began to grow. Local media caught wind of his community initiative, a program that provided mentorship, workshops, and safe spaces for black men who had been dismissed or ridiculed. Interviews followed, and Malik's story became a source of inspiration. He was no longer just surviving England's mockery, he was redefining the narrative entirely. Despite the progress, Malik never allowed himself to become complacent. Each small triumph was a reminder that the journey was ongoing, that resilience was a muscle to be exercised daily. He continued his walks through the city, now seeing familiar streets differently, not as places of alienation, but as landscapes of possibility, where he could leave a lasting mark. The climax of this chapter in his life came during a community event he organized. Dozens of young men attended, eyes wide with hope and curiosity. Malik stood on a makeshift stage, sharing his journey, the humiliations, the doubts, the struggles, and the victories. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. For the first time, he saw faces light up with the possibility of change, the power of courage reflected back at him. As part 3 closes, Malik realizes a profound truth: the world may mock, belittle, and underestimate, but the strength to rise above it and to uplift others along the way is a power no one can take away. His victories are no longer only personal, they are collective, a testament to the resilience and potential of an entire community. Malik is no longer just fighting for respect, he is building a legacy. Malik's momentum was undeniable. His work, his mentorship program, and his growing reputation were all evidence that he was no longer the man who had cowered under ridicule. Yet, life had a way of testing even the strongest resolve. It started subtly: a client subtly questioning his expertise, colleagues making underhanded remarks during meetings, whispers that grew louder in the corridors. But soon, a major crisis struck. One of Malik's biggest projects, the one he had poured months of effort into, faced a public setback. A miscommunication with a supplier caused delays, and suddenly, the blame was being unfairly directed toward him. The whispers became accusations. Social media caught wind of the mishap, and Malik's name was dragged into the online chatter. The ridicule that had once been private and contained now spread far and wide, threatening to undo the credibility he had painstakingly built. For the first time in years, Malik felt the weight of humiliation pressing down on him again, heavier than ever. But this time, he didn't retreat. Instead, he called a meeting with his team. He acknowledged the mistake not as an admission of failure, but as a recognition of a problem to solve. "We face a challenge," he said firmly, "and challenges are opportunities in disguise. We will fix this, together." His words, steady and resolute, inspired the same colleagues who had once doubted him. They rallied behind him, fueled by the respect he had earned through consistency, integrity, and courage. Over the next several days, Malik worked tirelessly, negotiating with suppliers, rearranging timelines, and maintaining constant communication with clients. Each obstacle tested his patience and ingenuity. The ridicule from outsiders still stung, but Malik had learned to channel the sting into determination rather than despair. During this time, Malik's community initiative also faced scrutiny. Some critics mocked it as a naive effort, claiming it couldn't possibly impact the entrenched problems of disrespect and prejudice. Malik responded not with anger, but with action. Workshops ran smoothly, mentorship sessions flourished, and young men in the program began sharing their own stories of growth and confidence. His actions silenced critics more effectively than any argument ever could. A turning point came during a high-stakes meeting with senior executives and the client. Malik presented the revised plan, outlining every detail of the recovery process. His clarity, calm demeanor, and unwavering commitment impressed everyone in the room. By the end of the meeting, the client had not only forgiven the delay but expressed renewed confidence in Malik's leadership. The project, once teetering on the edge of disaster, was back on track. That evening, Malik returned home exhausted but triumphant. He walked through the quiet streets of London, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The disrespect, the mockery, the constant doubt, these were not signs of weakness, but the fuel that had forged his resilience. He realized that the greatest victories were not in avoiding hardship, but in facing it head-on, with dignity and unwavering belief in oneself. Word of Malik's handling of the crisis spread quickly. Media outlets highlighted his leadership under pressure, framing him as an example of perseverance in the face of adversity. The young men in his mentorship program celebrated his triumph, seeing firsthand what courage, determination, and resilience could achieve. Yet, Malik remained humble. He knew that respect could be fragile and that every success was built on consistent effort. The world could still mock and challenge him, but he had discovered something far more powerful, the ability to rise above, to transform insult into opportunity, and to inspire others to do the same. As Part 4 closes, Malik stands at the peak of a personal and professional summit, yet he knows the climb is never truly over. The battle against prejudice, skepticism, and injustice continues, but so does his determination. The man who was once disrespected and underestimated is now a beacon, not just of success, but of resilience, courage, and the quiet, unstoppable power of unwavering self-belief. Malik's journey has entered its final stage, where the world that once mocked him will be forced to acknowledge not only his strength but the legacy he is creating. The city of London sparkled under the winter lights as Malik walked through its streets, the cold air sharp but invigorating. The journey he had taken from being mocked, disrespected, and underestimated to becoming a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of resilience, was almost surreal. Yet every step, every insult, and every small victory had led him here. Malik's mentorship program had grown beyond what he had ever imagined. Dozens of young men from the community were now part of the initiative, sharing their stories, supporting one another, and building a network of strength and opportunity. The program had become a lifeline for many, and Malik's own journey was a living proof of its purpose, that perseverance, courage, and self-belief could overcome even the harshest prejudice. One evening, Malik received an invitation to speak at a national conference focused on diversity and leadership. It was a stage far larger than he had ever imagined standing on, with an audience that included influential figures, journalists, and policymakers. For a moment, he thought of the young man who had walked the streets of East London, swallowed by humiliation and doubt. That man would have trembled at the thought of such recognition. Malik smiled, realizing how far he had come. When he took the stage, the room fell silent. Malik spoke with quiet authority, recounting his experiences of mockery and disrespect, the obstacles he had faced, and the strategies he had used to rise above them. But he did more than tell his story. He offered a vision. He spoke of the importance of community, mentorship, and lifting others as you climb. He emphasized that resilience was not about enduring alone, but about creating spaces where others could thrive, too. By the time he finished, the applause was overwhelming. But it was not the applause that mattered most, it was the faces in the crowd, young men, previously hesitant or insecure, now inspired, their eyes shining with hope. Malik realized that his legacy was no longer just his own, it was woven into the lives of everyone he had touched, and countless others who would continue the work he had begun. Back home, Malik reflected on the transformation of his life. The world that had once sneered at him had changed too, not entirely, but enough to see that courage and integrity could break through prejudice. His colleagues who had once doubted him now sought his advice, and his critics, though still present, had lost the power to diminish him. The man they had mocked was now a force of influence and inspiration. Malik also knew the journey would never truly end. Life would continue to challenge him, and new generations would face the same ridicule he had endured. But now he carried a certainty he had once lacked, the power to turn every challenge into an opportunity, and every insult into fuel for growth. As he stood by his window, looking out at the city, Malik felt a sense of profound peace. The young man who had been laughed at, who had been dismissed, had not only survived, he had thrived, and in doing so, had created a path for countless others to follow. His courage had forced the world to look back, to acknowledge his worth, and to recognize the strength that prejudice could never erase. Malik's story became more than a personal triumph, it became a testament to resilience, a symbol of hope for those facing disrespect and mockery. He had proven that dignity and perseverance were more powerful than ridicule, that courage could transform lives, and that one person's strength could ignite a movement of change. And in that moment, Malik understood something profound: the greatest victory is not in silencing others' doubts, but in rising above them and in lifting others to rise with you. The world that once mocked him now stood witness to his unwavering spirit, and his legacy was just beginning.